Hi and welcome to SCW, the wrestling channel here on YouTube.com. Thank you for choosing the channel and choosing the video. Please subscribe right now. Leave any comments in the comment section. Please like and share the video as well. Here once again answering your questions in the wrestling community here for Ask SCW. All the questions today have come from Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. All options should be coming up on your screen right about now. And as well, you can always drop the question here on the comment section on YouTube. Leave the hashtag AskSCW. I know to answer your question in the next video. But without further ado, let's get to our first question. But before we do that, go to WrestlingCustoms247.co.uk now and receive a free title free from the collection. Simply put the belt in your basket and use the code FREEBELT. There are great items on selection for you, including custom-made framed collections of Raw, SmackDown and all NXT championships. You've got bundles as well of a belt package from Raw, including the brand new United States Championship modeled by Ricochet. You've got the SmackDown collection as well, including the brand new Intercontinental Championship with AJ Styles. You've got The Fiend with his brand new Fiend Championship, and you've even got the NXT UK and the women's belt from the Women's Evolution available as well. As you can see, blimey, you gotta be joking me. That's right, the Iconics are holding those Women's Tag Team Championship belts. And as well as that, you've got custom-made retro belts, including the Red Universal Championship and as well Daniel Bryan's eco-friendly WWE Championship belt. So don't hesitate, go to WrestlingCustoms247.co.uk, check out the website and make your purchase here today. And don't forget, you can get a free belt with a figure as well. And the first question this week comes from Noob and Co. A collection of questions here, actually. What are your thoughts on Asuka competing on 2 matches at SummerSlam? Do you think Asuka should win both women's titles or win back the Raw Women's Championship at SummerSlam? And who is the face and who is the heel? Is it Braun Strowman or is it the Fiend Bray Wyatt? Great questions to kick us off there. We'll start off with Asuka. Now, I must admit, not to be negative, I was a little bit disappointed she won the Battle Royal on SmackDown. It just felt like there was an opportunity to give someone else a chance in WWE. It just goes to prove that WWE are using the tried and tested right now. Before, we had it with Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair. It feels now that with both of them out, that it is Asuka, Sasha Banks and Bayley. And the faith isn't quite in someone else at the moment. I think there would have been a good chance to use Bianca Belair, give her a championship match, bit of exposure on the big pay-per-view. Maybe Rhea Ripley would have been a great choice. She was my one that I was hoping for, really. When you look at it, I mean, of course, she had that momentum taken from her at WrestleMania, losing to Charlotte Flair, and she hasn't really gained it back, in my opinion, since, even though she still arguably has a prominent role on NXT. For me, I just would have loved to see her have that big moment at SummerSlam. Shayna Baszler could have been another one, but then at the same time, I suppose you look at heel versus heel, maybe could have been a bit awkward, even though she was my actual prediction going into the match. But looking at it, Asuka, she's in both matches, and it could work out in storyline terms to be quite fascinating. It feels that's the road they're going down. I know we've had Asuka versus Bayley a couple of times on Raw recently. We've had it as well with Sasha over the course of a couple of pay-per-views. I would like to see her win the Raw Championship back from Sasha Banks at SummerSlam. She might even do it with Bayley in quick fashion as well. You never know, it could be Asuka Neberoto, which is Japanese for Asuka 2 belts. Now, I must admit my Japanese isn't great, but for that alone, Dave Meltzer has just given this Q&A a 5-star rating, so thank you, Dave, really appreciate it. But going into serious matters here, I mean, we have pay-per-view coming up the following week called Payback, and maybe something could be twisted in here for the Payback pay-per-view. I mean, of course, the Tag Team Championships are going to be defended the week later. Wouldn't it be interesting if both Bayley and Sasha Banks actually lost both championships at SummerSlam, and then all they've got left is the Women's Tag Team Championships, and there's a fear that from having all the gold, they might not have any of the gold going forward. So there is a lot of twists and turns you can do with this, a lot of different dynamics. Do we need to see double champions consistently in WWE? I've said previously, I don't want to see that, but it could be interesting. And with Asuka, I mean, for her to have both the Raw and Women's Championships for Raw and SmackDown, I think that could be interesting in some way because it would add a different dynamic. I think SmackDown is lacking a challenger for Bayley and Sasha Banks. That's what I feel on that side of things. But we've had so many matches on the Raw side with this, so I kind of feel it would have been nicer if it had been someone else. But I do think that Asuka is going to at least win one of those belts. At this point, I wouldn't be surprised if she won both of them. But it's certainly, I think that the design of this, with her being involved, is going to cause more friction with Bayley and Sasha Banks. As for The Fiend and Braun Strowman, I mean, well, Braun's changed this week, hasn't he? He's had a nice little scare cut, hasn't he? I wonder if he thought it was in the hair versus hair match with Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose, but needless to say. I kind of like the direction that we've gone with this. It kind of feels that obviously everyone that encounters with the Fiend kind of ends up coming out a bit different. It feels that Braun Strowman here is someone now that is obviously a bit more heelish. We might finally have our monster back. He says he doesn't care about Alexa Bliss anymore, and obviously he said with Alexa that was making him do things, manipulating him to not be the monster he was. He kind of almost as if he becomes softer when he was with her, that he was a different person, and it kind of took him away from what he was meant to be. And I kind of like that in a way. It kind of really added some depth and layers to this storyline. So I'm back invested in this storyline. As bonkers as it is, I kind of feel back invested with it once again. They kind of took away as well, you didn't see the Alexa bump, which was, I think, kind of good really for that kind of thing on TV. But the Fiend come in and it kind of felt like he almost made the save. So have we had a double turn here? I'm not so sure. The Fiend doesn't kind of work for me as a baby face, but it kind of feels like he's laughing at what he's created, and that this is maybe what he wanted all along. It's maybe what I'm gathering from the storyline so far. I do wonder if there's a side note of this as well, that maybe Braun Strowman is playing on this, that maybe does deep down care for Alexa Bliss, and maybe he has to show the Fiend that he doesn't care, and if he does that, then maybe there's a way after that the Fiend will leave her alone. So there's lots of different avenues and alleyways we can take here with this this storyline from this point onwards, and I'm looking forward to seeing what it's going to lead to. And the key is Alexa Bliss as well, because she's probably fell for this hook, line and sinker, and has she changed from the Fiend as well? Is she now possessed herself? There's lots of different variables, and there's lots of different ways of interest of where this is going to be going forward. So I'm excited to see where this is going to go next. As for an answer for you, I definitely think we've got a more heelish Braun Strowman. I do think, though, that deep down he's still going to play the babyface role in this. I just think that we've literally finally got our monster back. Is he going to go off to be heelish after this? Time will tell. But I wouldn't be surprised if, when we've mentioned Payback already in this, you'll never see it coming, that tagline is used for around this particular storyline. So that's what I'm expecting. I'd expect a rematch the following week. I even wouldn't be surprised to see some sort of false finish. But time will tell me it, but we're going to carry on with Braun Strowman within our next question. And that next question comes from Austin Whitley. Now that Braun looks like Big Show and Gene Snitsky formed together, lol, where do you see him going from here? P.S. Had to throw in the joke in this one. And I don't blame you for doing it either. Honestly, the look is totally interesting, like you say, and it's definitely a fun comparison. Apparently, actually, Braun Strowman, breaking news, has been offered a show on Netflix, and apparently the show is called It Wasn't His Fault. But going on to serious stuff for you, I do actually believe that it could be an interesting dynamic, as we said, going forward with Braun Strowman. Maybe we finally got that monster back. I've been asking for it now, weeks, months, years even, and maybe we've got this dark side going forward. Like I say, a false finish is something that's a possibility for SummerSlam. I wouldn't rule it out. And we could see something at the next pay-per-view. Maybe a last man standing match could be a popular stipulation that could go on with this feud. I do actually feel for the first time Braun Strowman in this rivalry could walk away the victor, and that it wouldn't hurt the Fiend. And that's a really strong statement to say, because if we're going to actually really have Braun taken seriously as this monster, a changing look, a changing dynamic, maybe there's a feeling that finally we might get some momentum back with him, because it certainly has been lost throughout the summer. But what I felt on SmackDown was that there was something exciting, new and compelling with this Braun Strowman going forward. If we have a heel who's kind of a monster and can tear up the locker room, maybe we might get our 2017 guy back that we wanted to see, and that maybe he holds the belt until perhaps a challenger like Roman Reigns comes back. Maybe Big E can get into the title picture. Maybe some form like that. We might get a combination of the Braun Strowman that we had, who was flipping trucks over with people like Roman Reigns that were in him back in 2017, and we might even see a twist of that Bray Wyatt's Braun Strowman character that we had in the Wyatt family. If we put them together, combined, where we have a monster who's got a darker side, I think it definitely adds to compelling TV. The problem is that perhaps maybe it could become a bit like a Kane character, where eventually he will probably lose that momentum again and will probably fall back into the shuffle that he kind of has been in over the summer, perhaps in 6 to 12 months down the line. That's the only way of doing it. But there were times, if you look at Kane's career, he'd always have a little tweak to repackage himself, and he would become that monster again and be taken forward with credibility, whether it was, losing the mask, whether it was, taking on, the Undertaker in different formats. There was always ways that Kane would reinvent himself and make himself that, big monster once again, the big red machine. But then there would be those points that he'd go back and do the comedy with Hulk Hogan and The Rock, or, different things like with Daniel Bryan and stuff, back in 2013, or 2012, I should say. But yeah, there's different variables we can go down with it, and I'm excited to see where it's going to lead. One thing I would say is I think that the feud with The Fiend still has some mileage left in it, and I wouldn't be surprised if it went beyond SummerSlam. After that is anybody's guess at this point. But if we've got our monster back, and even if he's a heel, I'm fine with him being a heel. I think it kind of works with his character better. It's certainly going to be interesting. But there's definitely more questions than answers coming from SmackDown this week. But isn't that what we want each week after a WWE show? Questions more than answers. There's a reason to tune in next week, and I need to know what's going to happen next. So kudos WWE. I enjoyed SmackDown this week, and I think that the way they handled this storyline in particular was done very, very well. Next question comes from Mr. DWE himself. That's right, Dan the Man Williams is here on SCW. Is the PG era officially over now that TV14 has started popping up and we have seen a shift in more mature content with Raw Underground and Randy Orton's heel moves and more swearing in promos than normal? Well, I hope I'm saying his name right, but according to Tom Colohue, who's also on YouTube, by the way, did a Q&A session himself last night, actually. He's part of Sportskeeda, and he actually, speaking in that video, actually explained how his belief is that WWE is not currently going with a TV14 guidelines, but SmackDown itself was changed to that because of the content in the show warranted that actual TV rating change, with perhaps the the violence on Alexa Bliss. Of course, AJ Styles, of course, had his phenomenal intercontinental statistics system. You can put that together yourself of what that leads to, and of course with what's going on with Retribution, of course, of what's been leading off with like the writing stuff that's been going on as well in the USA. That's contribute to what was the change. But like you said, we have been seeing things in other areas as well. Raw Underground has felt a bit darker, a bit more of an adult, mature theme. Of course, we've had the Raw Dancers, which of course only lasted a week, but there has been a bit of controversy whether they should be brought back for this week. We'll have to wait and see what's going to happen with that. Of course, Randy Orton punting a pensioner, as you do. Of course, that's typical Randy Orton, if we're being brutally honest. But yeah, there's a lot more mature themes. There seems to be more swearing in promos and stuff. It does feel that WWE is certainly definitely pushing the boundaries a little bit, and there has been rumours going around that they wanted to bring sort of 90s style writing back. And I mean, for me, I'm totally on board with it. I like the idea of a more gritty, edgier product, because I think that it opens more doors, and it's certainly it connects with me as a target audience. When you're going for the family entertainment, I totally understand it. I have no problem with it, that you want to connect with all different audiences and stuff like that. And of course, WWE, with the sponsorships they've got, they probably can't go overboard with it. So I wouldn't expect a complete level overhaul where everything's very TV14 and they completely ditch the PG products altogether. But I would say is that if we have something where we're pushing the boundaries, and maybe, for example, like the third hour on Raw is perhaps a bit more, that's the hour where things change, maybe the second hour on SmackDown, those sort of things, I wouldn't be surprised to see where the envelope is just pushed a little bit, if you know what I mean. I'd be quite happy to see that. And I mean, if you look through TV history and stuff, I mean, I'm sure you and I and whoever's watching, there are programs that you've watched that are probably PG, that don't feature swearing, that don't feature unnecessary things, but still have gripping storylines and things that can hold you in and you might find entertaining. Whether it's a comedy, it holds you in, but there's a story developing. It all comes down to a good story with WWE. It doesn't need to have to be brutally graphic, with lots of blood everywhere. It doesn't have to feature lots of swearing. It just needs a good story. If you've got a good story in it, it doesn't matter what the rating is, because you're going to be compelled to know how it's going to finish. If you've got a nice start, a nice middle, a nice end, that will keep you going. But of course, when you have the idea of where you can do more things because you are not worried so much about the kids' viewership on certain things, yeah, you've got more different variables and options. I mean, for example, something I hate in the PG era, I hate when someone calls someone a coward. I just think to myself, you're reacting so badly to being called a coward, where I think that that's something that you would say if you were probably like 4 or 5 years old. So it doesn't really feel like a proper insult to me if you're going to try and get someone to go to maybe put a championship on the line or come into a match, or you're running away, you're a coward. It's sort of, it doesn't feel like for me that that's kind of got much credibility when you look at it. So in some ways, I think that it's good that it's going this way on the edgier side. But of course, they will need to worry about sponsorships and stuff. So don't expect them to go the full way. But time will tell, and we'll see. Because if the viewership starts increasing like it has been doing over the last couple of weeks, I think mainly gauging interest with Raw Underground, and when you look at perhaps with as well with Retribution, with what they're doing, SmackDown, I mean, you look and see what they're doing with the Braun Strowman, Bray Wyatt storyline, which we've already talked about with Alexa Bliss, AJ Styles, of course, with the great sort of fun with Joseph Park this week. I love that we had him on WWE TV. For those that are Impact and TNA fans, will be very fond of Joseph Park's work as him and Abyss. And Joseph Park's got great facials, and I would not be surprised if Vince McMahon looked at that and fell in love with Joseph, and we found a role for him in some way on TV. I wouldn't expect matches. He's past that, I think, at this stage of his career. But if you look at it, I think that he could actually deliver as a great manager, or some sort of, this statistical guy that can pop him up in different scenarios and that. His facials, his timing, and his line and use of the way he can just do promo work in general is amazing. So I hope that we do see more of him. But going back onto your question, I think it's exciting. I don't think it's the end of PG, but I think that we hopefully are going to get something a bit grittier going forward, because it certainly has gauged my interest. I think SmackDown this week is the best show I've seen from WWE in a long time. Now, I know we say this every few weeks and we go, oh, it's the best show in a while. I genuinely think that this is the best SmackDown I've seen, I want to say, in probably at least 6 months, maybe even a year. And I would even say perhaps further. They had where they still feel they were throwing things against the wall and seeing what was connecting. But for me, on this week's episode in particular, a lot more things connected. And I think if they can keep things down this sort of area, a lot of people had positive things, I think, to say about SmackDown this week. And I think you could find a raise in interest, a raise in the audience and viewership. And if they can continue building maybe a superstar or two in the way they're doing, like with a character change like that with Braun Strowman, certainly was interest there. Alexa Bliss, they're probably the most interested people have been in those two characters in a while. So maybe there could be a way that if they can keep the momentum and they don't think short term, they think long term of what to do with these characters, you might be able to build a star in some way, whether it's a good person or a bad person. We need monster heels. We need strong baby faces, and we need to have these characters to believe in, because characters and story, I think, is what's the key here to keep me engaged and to keep a lot of people engaged. Wrestling is good, and wrestling in 2020 is a lot better than what we've seen in so many different other eras of wrestling. And probably the strongest ever talent pool we've seen compete in a ring. But storytelling wise and character development is what seems to be lacking. And whether they need to push the envelope a little bit to get those characters where they're more believable for people, maybe that's a route they need to go down. And maybe it will help push those ratings a bit further up. But it all comes down to ratings. It all comes down to sponsorships. Those are going to be the telling points. Controversy creates cash. So without further ado, our next question comes from the controversial one, Jamie Holmes. Do you think that Kaylee Ray could be part of Retribution? This masked woman seems to be the same height as her, and wrestlers have changed their appearance during lockdown. Kaylee could have easily dyed her hair. Well, firstly, let's show on the screen the actual image she is referring to. I must admit, when I first saw this, I actually wondered if it was Ember Moon, actually, if I'm being brutally honest. But there was another one going around also that I think a lot of people were speculating that could be Carmella. I even thought Santana Garrett could be a potential as well. There's lots of different variables of who it may or may not be. But looking from SCW, George, of course, has done a little bit of research and has looked and perhaps seen one or two superstars from Evolve. Now, WWE have recently purchased Evolve, and Evolve has now been on the WWE Network as of this weekend. Are we going to see one or two of their stars come into the product? We have got two names that could be, if we bring both pictures up to the screen for you, we've got Brandy Lauren and we've got Jessica Kamea, which I hope I've said both names correctly. Those are potentially the two superstars that are under those masks. So time will tell if that proves to be the case, for sure. But they're certainly looking at those two could certainly be matches. So, and of course with WWE purchasing Evolve and them no longer having their company, maybe this is an idea of why they need Retribution. I think we have to say, just to break off the question at this point, can we just keep Retribution on SmackDown, by the way, rather than having them on Raw? They seem to have a lot more credibility being booked on a Friday show than they are on a Monday show. They seem to be just juvenile little kids on a Monday show, and on Friday they look menacing, dangerous, and people are frightened of them. And I really love the direction they have on Fridays, and I absolutely detest how they book them on Mondays. But what's very interesting is we had 5 on a SmackDown last week. We had 5 on Raw this week. We had lots of them on SmackDown just this past Friday, and that makes you really think that actually maybe it could be the entire Evolve roster. Maybe this is going to start being like almost like a Nexus 2.0, where perhaps a lot of people are nobodies. Maybe there's one higher power under this, who could be the person who's in control of the whole thing, who's orchestrated it, who maybe is the name value that people are looking for. But it's certainly going to be interesting to see how and where this is going to be going forward. But Kaylee Ray, is it a potential? Of course it's a potential. I mean, there's lots of rumours that are going around that the people under those masks are just filling the roles until we know who is actually going to be under the mask. Of course, Vanessa Bourne's hair was standing out like a sore thumb on the previous week's SmackDown. So it feels that maybe characters are changing, unless there's about 3 or 4 women under the gimmick. So yeah, there's lots of different directions that this can be taken. And I think right now, we seem to always look and see who's under the mask, who's talking, and we think to ourselves, who's it going to be? We might be able to work out who's under the mask each and every week, but what I would say is we don't know who the final people are going to be. We don't know the final direction. According to the rumour mill, WWE still doesn't really know the final direction, which does make me worry about this stable a little bit. But you look at it and say to yourselves that what we see today may not be the case tomorrow. WWE could reveal different people. Dominik Dijakovic was supposed to be someone rumoured that was going to be involved with this, and so far I've not seen anyone near his height under one of these masks. So, I mean, we'll have to wait and see with it all. But Kaylee Ray, is a potential? Would she fit very well? Yeah, she would be quite good and credible in this role. She's got great experience in the ring, NXT UK Women's Champion. She's someone that's, carried the UK scene for many, many years. She can work well in the ring, and I think she would put some good matches out of the main women's roster on WWE. I think that she's someone that can hold some good matches and hold her own. The only thing that I think would go against her is that we've not seen many of the NXT UK talents involved in NXT in any format recently. Rich Holland is probably the one exception, although from my understanding he lives in Florida, so that may be the reason why. But if you look at people like Mustache Mountain, Tyler Bate, Trent Seven, lots of different superstars have not been featured. Tony Storm hasn't been featured either, who's someone you'd think would be someone that you'd look to try and find an excuse to do something with her in WWE because she's such a talent. But so we'll have to wait and see if that thing goes against Kaylee Ray. But we've given those couple of names there from Evolve, or what we believe are the people under those masks. We'll have to wait and see as and when the real reveals are done, who are going to be the characters there. But it certainly is the interesting part of this storyline so far, and certainly what they do on SmackDown as well. But I always love a mystery of who done it and who's under the mask. So let's see who's under this mysterious stable. It's certainly going to hold intrigue for another few weeks, should they continue to hold off from revealing who those members are going to be. Next question comes from Mike, Italian Habs Mike for us now. He's got 2 questions. He says, if Karrion Kross becomes the next NXT champion, who should be the first challenger and who should win the title off Kross? To me, Dexter versus Kross would be a great feud. Dexter not saying a word and playing mind games would be as great foil for Kross. I'm going to say now, I absolutely love that idea. I love the idea of Loomis versus Kross. I think that it would be an awesome feud between the two. But what I would say is that I do feel that if Karrion Kross was to win the championship, I'm not sure they'd put him in there straight away with someone who's not main event level yet. I mean, if you look at this, these are 2 characters that I think, along with Keith Lee, they are 3 guys that could be carrying the company in some format on one of the shows in the next year to 2 years. They should be all fast-trackers from as far as I'm concerned, because they're all characters, they're all believable, and I think that they would actually do such credit to the main event area of a Raw or a SmackDown. Imagine put them 3 on SmackDown now with Braun Strowman, The Fiend, Big E, AJ Styles, and when Roman Reigns comes back, what a heavy main event scene you've got there. Different characters you can mix around. It's going to be so much fun to see, like Dexter Loomis against The Fiend, and all these different variables that you could have. Karrion Kross against Roman Reigns, or Braun Strowman against Keith Lee would be absolutely incredible. But I mean, to look at those characters, it would be great to see that, and I think that one day, I think we will get Dexter Lumis versus Karrion Kross as a feud in NXT, and from, like you said, those variables, I think it would be a lot of fun. If Karrion Kross was to win the championship from Keith Lee, I would expect them to have a rematch first, and I could even see, even if Karrion Kross lost, there could be a rematch at the next TakeOver, which I believe is set for October, because they're not going to have the UK one now, I don't believe, so they're going to set another one for October for the main brand of NXT instead. Please be Halloween Havoc. But looking at it, I can say that if you want to have Karrion Kross as the champion and a new challenger, I would go Finn Balor. Just my reasoning for it, Finn Balor is someone that is seen as like, a name, if you want. If you want to go for those head-to-head ratings, they're going to want to have someone in and around that main event scene who people can identify with. And Finn Balor is a guy that people can do that where they've been watching Raw and SmackDown for years. NXT fans connect with him. It might be a way to sway people from watching AEW. And I think that that's going to be the key. I mean, you have to remember, Karrion Kross has had 6 matches, maybe 7 matches at this point. Yes, he's dominated every single one of them. And yeah, Tommaso Ciampa was one of them. But if you look at it, I mean, from a different perspective, Karrion Kross, I mean, was the main event, I believe, of a NXT just recently, and that week was not so strong in the ratings against AEW. I don't think, from a Wednesday Night War perspective, that Karrion Kross has currently been around long enough to make a difference at this point. So if you're going to have him as your champion, you need to put him in a program where people are going to tune in as much for the other guy as they are your champion. And Finn Balor is established and he's ready and he's there, he's now. And I think that when Karrion Kross has beaten someone like Finn Balor, he will all of a sudden then have more credibility as the champion and have a meaningful process. And people will go, wait, this guy's the real deal. He's just beat Finn Balor. He beat Tommaso Ciampa before. He's beaten Keith Lee. And then you start thinking, well, hang on, Karrion Kross is the man. And then that's when you start throwing in and go, how about that feud with Dexter Lumis that we were thinking about, where we can put those two characters and go against each other for a lot of fun? So I think that's the way to do it. If it was me going to be booking it, and but I'm interested to see. Is for me, it's almost the big money match next weekend in some ways. I'm really looking forward to Lee versus Kross. I'm still torn of which way I think it's going to go, but predictions will be coming out for NXT TakeOver and SummerSlam this week. So do keep an eye out for the channel for those. Next question comes from Straight Edge Josh. Which finisher is better, an old school Piledriver or an old school DDT? I love both. I have to say that straight out here and now, I love both. I love that a Piledriver can be done so well. You look at the current things in Impact Wrestling. Sami Callihan throws a great devastating Piledriver. Eric Young always gets a great Piledriver as well. But you look at the old days, a DDT used to go down so well. Jake Roberts, Arn Anderson on Nitro, the place would erupt when you saw that DDT. It literally come out of nowhere like an RKO. It was one of those kind of moves. A Piledriver seems to take longer, to actually hit. But I always feel it's the more devastating move. So from my perspective, I love both moves. From an impact move, the DDT is the one that probably is more impactful and gets perhaps more of the crowd reaction on a quick pop basis. From a devastation point of view and a move that's more dangerous to put over, the Piledriver is the one. And for me, I'm more preferable of the Piledriver move from a devastation effect because of the fact that it looks a bit more brutal, and of course there's a lot more risk element to it. So for me, I've always had more of a connection with the Piledriver, but I'm a big fan of both moves and usually pop for both. So yeah, I like both. Tie-up world order of our next question for us now, and with Scott Demore saying he'd love to host the North versus FTR, and both teams being on board as well. Give your odds on this actually happening. Surely it's a best of 3 series if it happens, one on each brand, then what? I have an idea, but interested to hear what you come up with. Well, you're going to have to drop that idea in the comments below, because I'm interested to know what your idea is, if I'm being brutally honest. But looking at it, the odds of it actually happening, well, we have to, talk about the big thing here is that both brands would have to be finding an opportunity to, lend the talents. And like you say, if both are on board and they can find a way of it happening, it certainly would be something where you'd have to have at least a best of 3 series, I think, for it to work. It looks like FTR look to be tied up, I think, for All Out, so I would rule that particular pay-per-view out. I wouldn't do it on the weekly tapings. I just think even though AEW could pop a rating, or attempt to pop a rating with it, with the idea of, doing inter-brand war with AEW versus Impact Wrestling, I think that the best way to do this would be the start on Bound for Glory. And I think that you could come in on that. I think then if they have Full Gear for AEW, the next pay-per-view after that, then there's a potential they could do it there. And then we could see with the last particular show. But my idea for it would be to have whoever wins the first match gets the home field advantage for the third match. So if I was booking it, this is how I would do it. This is just me personally. I would have, if it was at Bound for Glory, I would have FTR pick up the first win. So it kind of makes it look like, the most sense is like, well, hang on, we've come into your house and we've won. We've now got it 2 in a row in our house. We're going to dominate. This is going to be easy for FTR. And then, of course, the North come in and pick up the victory in the second match, which then, of course, makes you think, well, hang on, they've come back, they've come from 1-0 down, they've also come into your house, and they're going to come in your house again, and they're not frightened to do so and pick up a W. So it really sets that third match up. And if someone's a tag team champion, if both are tag team champions, that could be a very tasty way of doing things as well. But I wouldn't want to see titles on the line because I just don't think that, I can't see a long-term vision of both promotions doing something where they did, a head-to-head pay-per-view, although that would be a lot of fun and would be something I'd be interested in. I just not sure that it's something that they would do. There has been, of course, when we look at chances of it actually happening, rumours have been circling around on multiple different news sites that AEW may be interested in signing up Ethan Page when his contract expires, which currently is at the end of the year, if rumours are to be believed to be true. There has been no talk that Ethan Page is quite happy to stay with Impact Wrestling, so there's no signs to say that he would necessarily jump at the opportunity just because another brand is interested. I don't blame AEW for being interested. If I was any company, if I owned a company, I would be interested in Ethan Page. I'd want to see the North in my promotion. I think they're one of the best tag teams going around today. The question would be what his next move is going to be and what he chooses to do. And I'm sure he and Josh Alexander will do what's best for the both of them. Of course, as an Impact fan, I want to see him stay around and stick around Impact Wrestling. They're really building that brand at the minute. AEW has so many tag teams, so do they need another one? But at the same time, would I want to see the North versus the Lucha Bros versus, we've seen it before, but against the Young Bucks, FTR, like we've said there, if they don't do this sort of war, of course, you want to see those matches as well. So it's a very difficult one of what will happen, and we will, of course, always have to support the talents of what they choose to do. I think as a fan, it's always a win-win. But as for how we can get this match to go on, if we could have it where the North stick around in Impact Wrestling, and we do have FTR, who are sticking around where they are, but we can do this cross-promotional stuff, then why not? I'm all for it. I'd love to see it. But we'll have to wait and see if it will actually get around where they can agree to actually happening, because even if Scott D'Amore is up for it, Cody Rhodes, Tony Khan, they need to be up for it on their side as well, unless, they're willing to let FTR go for one match, and then it's just done in Impact Wrestling. We'll have to wait and see. But at this point, it's still a pipe dream for us all. So right now, it's the dream match. We just have to see if both teams are up for it, if there's a way they can figure it out. Next question coming from Joseph Ashcraft. Why is WWE going to the Amway Center? Well, we've actually touched on this Week in Wrestling, so it's my usual time to give a nice plug on this. We gave about a good 10-minute answer of what we thought were the benefits for it, but I will try and sum up for you in a summarised version. It looks like WWE want to have a break from the PC. I think they've kind of got limited to what they can do in the space of what they've got. They'll have an actual arena. They were saving money by doing stuff in the PC, but the ratings are massively going down, and they can't seem to, keep hold of their viewership. And I think one way they think that they'll be able to gain that viewership back is a change of location. There has been a lot of buzz and interest in when WWE have done things away from the PC, whether it's a cinematic match, whether it's, something of a different sort of environment. A lot of times fans have had interest in what they're doing there rather than what's going on in the PC. It worked for the short term, but now I think that if you look with AEW probably looks like the more, dare you say, professional looking brand at the moment with their continual tapings at Daily's Place. It looks like it's a bigger deal with the space, and of course they're not really spending any money having it at Daily's Place because of course they have the Jacksonville Jaguars. But from WWE's perspective, that money being spent for them probably is worth it because they have a new environment. The superstars apparently are rejuvenated and excited to be in this sort of environment. So I think there's a lot of different reasons of why they want to do it. They have more space they can work with, perhaps more different angles they can throw at. We're going to go back to live TV, which means we're not going to have all the spoilers coming out each and every time. So there are a lot of different possibilities and positives that have come from it. I think as well with the idea of Fox, they want to have the virtual fans that's been used for other sports in America. I know baseball has done it, the NBA has done it. For us, for the UK folk, for the Premier League that came back, we had virtual fans as well. It's probably just going to be a screen with people signing in on an app on Zoom, and you might get a bit of the crowd noise from that. I think WWE will be selective if they're not getting the positive reactions they want off the Zoom crowd. I expect they might be still pumping through a bit of their own noise. They may still have the NXT superstars, the Performance Center people around the ringside. They may still have the plexiglass, but they'll have a bigger space to work with. And I think that they can make perhaps more of what they've got with more space, and they can use the arena in different ways, and yeah, it could be very exciting. I would have loved to have seen Retribution turn up, and one thing I'd love to see on Raw tonight, actually, this is my hope of what to see happen. I want to see Retribution come in and destroy the Performance Center as the close of a Raw, to the point that they turn around and say, we can't use here anymore. Now, I know on SmackDown they said that they could be somewhere else next Friday. I want them to feel forced. I think that would have been a great way to have closed off one and started another. If you could just turn around and said, we're going to destroy the Performance Center, and they did to the point, like what they did almost on SmackDown, but make it worse, to the point where they go, well, hang on, we can't be here anymore. We've got away. We took a different location from Retribution, but as soon as you say the Amway Center, they know where to find you. But they've got a bigger space to work with, and I don't know. There's just lots of different ways and variables they can do it, and hopefully it should make more easy viewing, pleasurable viewing for the viewer at home, especially while we don't have fans. And maybe this is also to do with fans. When we can get to a point where fans can start coming back into arenas, maybe socially distanced, they've got an arena that they're probably going to rent out for the rest of the year, and that they can probably say, I don't know how big this Amway Center is, but maybe they might be able to get in 1,000-2,000 fans into this sort of area, keep them nicely distanced apart, and maybe there's that hope and positivity that they're going to have the opportunity to do it going forward. So time will tell. We'll have to wait and see. But I'm excited to see it. I'm, as a viewer, really desperate to see a different location used. I do feel that everything feels trapped and cramped in the PC. I felt that it worked for the short term, but when every show is there, I feel like, oh, it's a bit trapped. At least when we see this in the Amway Center, it's going to feel slightly like every show does around the country. So it's not going to feel so different that you're seeing the same thing every week. And you might have, and this is another key thing that's not been mentioned yet, you might see the return of the individual Raw and SmackDown sets if things are being done live. So you might get a different shape of each show, and each show will feel fresher and different. And I think that that's what WWE is looking for. If everything feels the same, everyone feels they've seen it before, this way they might be able to feel like you're seeing something fresh, something different, something new, maybe an access of fans. For me, I'm excited at the moment. I feel this is a win-win decision WWE have made. Matt Slam at 13 at Sports and Gaming with our next question for us now. Has the SmackDown hacker now gone, or have I just missed him or her? To give you basically the answer for this for now is that it looks like it was dropped. It was mentioned at Money in the Bank last. I think they kind of replayed what they showed at that pay-per-view the week after, and it hasn't been seen since. The one thing that we mentioned on last week's show was a question that came in asking if the hacker was linked with Retribution, and I stuck my neck out and I said that I believed it could be, and I believe that perhaps it should be, because if you notice the hacker, it's kind of dressed similar to what we've seen with Retribution. So I do wonder if the hacker could be, if you want, like a higher power for this, or maybe we've just seen so many different superstars in the hacker position that actually there's lots of them that are part of Retribution. So I think they should actually bring both storylines together. I think that that would be the right move going forward. We'll have to wait and see if WWE will do that. But as of the time of actually recording, the storyline was seemingly dropped but not forgotten. Hopefully to be brought back at some point. And I think that that would be the right place to bring it back if it was me. Last question this week comes from Israel Galaz at 3. What's good, lad? Well, everything's very good, thank you. Hope you're well as well. Do you think Raw Underground has a chance in hell at being entertaining and beneficial to the show in any way before its inevitability shelved and forgotten about altogether? Ouch. Personally, I kind of still sit on the fence of it, but as I said last week, I felt that they had a big missing part of the story after the first week to the second week. Where was the Hurt Business? What was their involvement? They took over it, and then it was kind of vanished and forgotten about the second week. Comes across WWE, it's playing this, week by week, and they don't really have a full direction with it yet. Could they make this into something that is entertaining and could work? I think yes. I think they could do it in some format, but they have to find what their direction is going to be of it, and they need to have an explanation of what they're doing. My ways of thinking of what this could improve it would be to find it as, if the Hurt Business were to be involved with it, I said this previous time, but and I don't think they'll do this now, but say someone overtook it, maybe Shane McMahon is still the one in control of it. I'd like to see people, meant to be fighting for money. I'd like to see, these people like Dabba-Kato, these evolved superstars, those be the people that are featured rather than actually ready-made WWE superstars. If you've got those superstars, you've got a chance of building a new character and new stars rather than actually using the tried and tested. I didn't mind Shayna Baszler being in there. I wouldn't mind Bobby Lashley being in there, but I kind of find it strange with people like Dolph Ziggler, Eric from the Viking Raiders. Those things didn't connect for me. Riddick Moss, I mean, he's been off TV for a long time, so you could bring him back in this environment. It wouldn't be the worst. But I'd like to see the unknown superstars build a reputation from this, and then they sort of win squash matches, and then maybe it forms a stable. You know, the Raw Underground, you know, wants to come up and take over what's going on in the ring, and we just see these dominant guys that are destroying people in 2 minutes in the Raw Underground set actually then being put to the test against the people of Raw and SmackDown rosters. That for me would work. That for me kind of is interesting, and it would break away from the show of what they did in the PC and what they would do elsewhere. It'll be interesting to set, by the way, when they do it in the Amway Center, what they'll do for Raw Underground and how they'll make that setting there. But if you're going to continue to mix it and match it, and it's not really going to have any continuity, any sense, for me, it kind of lacks. I wouldn't mind if it was used for cinematic angles, to be honest, either. It's a different environment, it's darker looking, and I think that instead of cinematic matches, I think cinematic angles could be an interesting method going forward as well, because that's something that was done a lot in Lucha Underground, and I think was very successful with that. Obviously, for a small promotion of when it was around, a lot of people were interested in the way that they put their angles together, and then not everything is done in and around the ring all the time. You've got this environment you can put it as well as backstage. So, you know, for me, those are different ideas that you could do to make it perhaps interesting, successful. But like you say, time will tell if it does stick around or not. We have, of course, had, you know, Corey Graves' kind of electric chair where Sami Zayn said AEW the first week. That was dropped after 1 week. I think then we have like almost like a darker third hour of Raw, which lasted like 2 weeks. So some things you know, are given a go and they have a short shelf life and they go. I wouldn't be surprised if this was one of them, but they could make it work if they found a way of making a niche out of it, making a way of creating stars and maybe giving it as a separate entity to the brand that they're currently showing. Because if they mix and match it, it kind of feels like, well, what's the point? I don't really see the point of what they're doing so far. So I'm still a bit skeptical with this, but obviously Raw coming up this evening. I'm interested to see what they're going to do for the third week. I'm still kind of trying to keep an open mind with it, despite being finding it a bit more miss than hit at this point. I found a couple of hits, but I've found a few misses as well. So let's see where they're going to go with this for another couple of weeks, and if it lasts beyond another few weeks, and I'll get back to you with my feelings of it as and when we see more develop with Raw Underground. But that's all from me anyway for this particular video. Thank you for watching as always. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Please share it with a friend as well. Spread the word of SCW, the wrestling channel. We'll be back with NXT TakeOver and SummerSlam predictions this week. This Week in Wrestling will be around this week as well. So lots to check out on the channel. Subscribe. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys next time.